So, you've painstakingly crafted a beautiful looking title screen, but at the moment it's just a little boring and lifeless. In this tutorial, we'll look at how to use animations to bring your main menu to life. Let's get started. Alright, so you don't need much in your scene to get started, but you will need to make sure that you've got a canvas, which is going to need to have a start button to take you to the next scene, as well as a title. This could be TextMesh Pro or an image of your own like I'm using. You'll notice that I also have some graphics here, which are just elements in my scene that I put in the background to make them look pretty, but are totally optional. Alright, so let's get started by bringing this title to life. So I'm going to begin by clicking on it, and actually I prefer to click on it in the hierarchy to make sure I've got it. And we're going to go to our animation pane here. If animation is not currently available, you can find it by going up to Window, go down to Animation, and then select Animation. And while clicked on our title, we're just going to go down to Create. I'm going to call this one Title Animation. And by hitting the Record button, you'll now make it so that any changes we make to our title will be recorded on the timeline here. So for mine, I'm going to have it actually start off up top here off of the screen. And I'm going to have a little bit of a delay, maybe about 15 frames. And at that point, I'm going to actually just copy this initial one because I don't want it to do anything, so it'll stay where it is for 15 frames. I just hit Command-C to copy and Command-V to paste. And then at this point, I'm going to have it move downwards. I'm going to have it take about a full second to get down. And there we go. Now at this point, I can stop recording, and if I go back into my project window here, you'll see that my title animation has now shown up in my assets folder. I'm just going to unclick loop time because I don't want it to perpetually loop through that animation. I simply want it to start off screen and then move on screen once the game begins. All right, that came in rather quickly, but otherwise things are working pretty nicely. To fix that is actually really easy. You can simply grab the last item on your bar here and just slide it over to where you want it to go. I think I'm going to slide mine back all the way to maybe 2 seconds. All right, now one other thing I want to do to make this a little more interesting is once my title screen arrives in the screen, I don't just want it to sit there. I'm going to have it sort of squash in and out a little bit. So to do this, I'm going to actually create a new animation. So where it says title animation here, I can click that, go to create new clip. Let's call this one title squash. Once again, I'll hit the record button, but now instead of moving its position, I'm simply going to adjust its scale. So I'm going to make it so that at the beginning, let's have it start off just a little bigger and a tiny bit wider. And just by doing that, we'll now register its scale on our chart here. And let's say that in the first half second, we'll have it squish out and down a little bit. And then at 1 minute, we'll have it kind of go back into the way it was. So I'm just going to copy that first node here and paste it over here at the 1 second mark. Let's just see what that looks like in a loop. All right, it's a little dramatic. Probably don't need it to be getting quite so wide, but it works. Now, if you just play the game as is, you'll notice that the squash doesn't take effect at all, only the first animation you put on. To fix that, we're going to need our animator window. Again, this can be found by going Window, Animation, and then Animator. Now you'll notice that by default, the first animation you made is now the default state. It's indicated with this orange line, and that's actually the way we want it to be. But what I want is so that once this one is played, it then goes to our title squash. So I'm just going to make a new transition, headed that way. And while clicked on it, the things we just want to do here is make sure we do want exit time, and you can click settings to expand that. Actually, those look all right. So you can see here, it will play through our title animation and then transition into the title squash. Now our title squash here has loop time on it, and that's actually the way we want it to be because we want our title to be squashing over and over again. And with just a little bit of tweaking to the timing and squash effects, we've got a nice lively looking title screen here. All right, let's take a second to look at our buttons. At the moment, they're present throughout the opening sequence, but I think I'd like to make it so that they start off invisible and then fade in after our title appears. To do this, we're simply going to select our button over here in the canvas, head down to our animation window, and create a new clip. I'm going to call mine Fade In, and I'm going to hit the record button. So at the very beginning, we actually want it to be fully transparent. So to do that, we'll click on the Start button. We can head over here to our image, and under Color, we're going to slide our alpha all the way to 0. This will make our box, totally invisible. Now I'm going to want to expand this and do the same thing for our text. I'm going to actually copy those two nodes, head down to the 2.5 second mark, which is when my title arrives in the screen, and paste them there so that they will still be invisible at that point, and this is where we'll want the fade to begin. I'll have mine fade in maybe over 1.5 seconds, so I'll have it go from 2.5 to 4, and by 4 I want to have them fully visible. So while still recording, I'll head over to my start button, pick color, and now slide my alpha to 100%. And then do the same thing with my text. Vertex color, alpha, all the way up to 100. You can now stop recording. We'll hit play, and you'll see that it starts invisible, and at 2.5 seconds, we get a nice fade in. Now I'll also want to make sure to take looping off. So select fade in, and turn off loop time so that it doesn't keep going invisible and then reappearing. Now you could set up the other one manually, but additionally you could also just click on Options button, go to your animator, and make sure to drag in your fade in state and set it as a default. Now when we hit play, we have a nice scrolling title that squashes and stretches, as well as buttons that slowly fade in. Much more interesting than what we had before. Alright, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please be sure to click like or subscribe to the channel. Till next time, this is Matt with Night Run Studio. Cheers.